Well, hello there.
Hello.
Friends, lovers. Thank you for joining us. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir and you, and we are glad you are here. Checking out the chat here. Oh, got to mute one of my monitors here. I always have that one muted, but there we go. And thank you. Thank you for joining us. Today is August 25th. Man, that sounds way too late in the summer, but it's not over yet. 27 days left until the end of summer. Hope you're having a great one. We certainly are. We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Enjoy every day before the snow comes.
We had a cold few days here in Motown in southeast Michigan.
It was not. It was very lovely. It was very polite weather.
It's
very polite weather.
I would take it as a sign of my aging that Amy said, "Oh well, you know, first day of fall." And it took me a second. Wait, that's not right, is it? Obviously, I should have just laughed, because immediately you would think, of course. But I mentioned it to somebody, let's say, in the family who is a generation younger than me, and she had the same reaction. So I guess it's not my age, it's my IQ, or something like that. Anyway, still summer, 27 days left to make the best of it. There's 122 days until Christmas. And 67 days until Halloween. Yes,
Yay!
The Halloween stores are already doing that thing. Where did we go to? Michael's? Michael's. And it's already become a Halloween store. And a quarter of the place is all Halloween stuff. If you're into Halloween, I'm sure you are digging that too. Let me refresh my screen here. As always, Facebook makes it hard for me to get in. I think it just takes a minute, and I just have to accept that. But I do see the author, Jim Ashley, is on the Facebook side. Nice new intro, Jim. Jim, you're the first one to notice. I'm glad you caught that. Yes. Now, that is actually the old intro jam with a bit of AI modification. So, yes, it's suddenly in a major key. I always said I was going to re-record that intro instead of being in a minor key, in a major key. And glad you picked up on that. It doesn't sound great, but it was easy, and I let a computer do it for me. And again, today is August 25th, and it has been an interesting week. And a few of the things that made the week interesting are going to make this discussion this evening interesting for you. But first, on this date, August 25th, well, 1944, August 25th, 1944, Paris was liberated.
Hooray!
After 4 years of Nazi occupation. I still can't believe that it is only 80 years ago. Crazy, crazy stuff. But it does give me a recommendation. If you missed last year the miniseries All the Light We Cannot See, a charming, well, as charming as anything about World War II can be, a great miniseries, you should pick up on that.
That was nice.
Some folks told me, no, I read the book and it was better. I'll bet the book was better, but I also know a few of the plot points in the book may have been truer to the spirit of World War II, but were also a little more depressing. So for that reason, I recommend the miniseries All the Light We Cannot See. And yes, it was only 80 years ago. I got into a bit of a rabbit hole. Anytime I look into World War II, it's I cannot fathom what happened. And I end up looking into the actual intentions and goals of the Germans as well as the Japanese.
Yeah.
And it's strange because in some ways the Japanese were as bad. I shouldn't say the Japanese, because there were so many great Japanese Americans who went through internment for no good reason. The nation of Japan, the Emperor Hirohito of Japan.
You could call them Shintoists, maybe? I don't know.
Don't know. I know
something like that.
I know that was one of the names for the ideology of the time. Without getting too deeply into it, I get too deeply into it anytime I look into World War II. It's why when we went to New Orleans and went to the World War II Museum there's a lot of World War II museums, but the one in New Orleans is the World War II Museum. It was hard. It's really hard.
Oh, it was so hard.
It's hard. Well, Amy, I know for you the hardest part was the senselessness of it.
Well, and also
the philosophy behind it.
The lack of any philosophical explanation in the exhibit.
Whereas for me,
I need a do-over.
Yeah.
I need a do-over.
For me, it was more the raw data. Just it
was right. I mean, obviously, it was right after World War One, and oh my gosh, how very senseless. I mean, I suppose
30 years, people don't have that long a memory.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really that they forgot after 30 years. It was 30 years of the aftermath of World War I.
Right.
Including the crushing of the German economy and the crushing of the German spirit, despite a philosophical belief that they were destined to be the rulers of the world.
Right.
They were the ones being punished, and it seemed like eternally punished. Anyway, we won't get into that. Better answers, better explanations to be found in Leonard Peikoff's book, The Ominous Parallels.
Yeah, or the, I think the new title is...
The Cause of Hitler's Germany.
The Cause of Hitler's Germany. Yeah,
right.
That's it.
Right. But do see that miniseries, All the Light We Cannot See. Again, on this date, okay, let's jump forward 14 years. Momofuku Ando. See, this is where the Japanese redeem themselves. Momofuku Ando creates the first mass-market instant ramen.
Yay! Instant ramen!
You know, Yaron Brook this afternoon had a premiere. He wasn't live, but he did an interview. It was a good interview. And he was talking about capitalism. And among other things, he made the point that in a free market, yeah, the rich get richer. And they get richer faster than poor people do. There is inequality. But because that happens, the poor actually get richer. People come out of poverty faster and in greater quantity than if you imposed a more egalitarian market.
Yes.
You can't just have a more egalitarian market, you have to impose it. You ruin what brings people out of poverty by saying, well, but I don't want some people to be really, really rich. So I think Momofuku Ando would have understood that, because I remember the days of ramen noodles. I'm at a point in my life where I don't eat instant ramen noodles. Of course, ramen was around before 1958, but the instant ramen noodle that we all know and love, you know, the top ramen, all of these different...
Well, I'll say it wasn't quite instant. It took a whole 2 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
That was long 2 minutes waiting for that. You have an inch of water in a little pot. You boil that. You put the noodles in, and then it takes a good minute or so for actually to soften up. And then you put in your packet of MSG and spices. Now, if they had, let me know in the chat if you know of anywhere in the world where one can get mushroom-flavored ramen.
Now, that might sound silly, but or unusually specific.
It's really important.
But I have been looking for years, ever since Amy said to me one day as we were looking at ramen in a grocery store, because it's amusing, it's funny, there are stacks of them, and they're like 10 cents a piece. I thought inflation, they might be up to a quarter a piece, 25 cents for a meal. And Amy said, you know, there was one I actually liked. It was the mushroom one. I said, maybe I remember that. I have been looking for that every time I go to a grocery store. And I don't just have my assistants do that. I actually go to grocery stores. I do grocery shopping. I have not found this mushroom. I'm guessing it was something that they used to make and don't anymore. But
right.
If you know of it, if you can find it, if you can find a place online we could order it. Again, we'd probably order it once for old time's sake, eat it, say, oh my God, that salty dreck we used to enjoy. But it would be great if we could get our hands on it.
I would love it.
You've got to find the things that you loved in your childhood and go back to them at least every now and then. It's fun. Mm-hmm. We did that this week with hot fudge.
Yes.
It used to be that the best hot fudge you could get, price no object, was Saunders, or Sanders, some would say. And Saunders hot fudge was the best, and then a few years back it disappeared. You didn't see it in grocery stores, and we looked online, we couldn't find it online.
And it was in this nice kind of vertical glass canister that was tall and vertical, and it disappeared.
Now, I don't know if we just missed it in our searches or if it actually went away and came back, but it turns out you can now get it once again. Unfortunately, if you buy it, it's now like a 10-ounce jar.
And it costs...
And it's a $10 jar with about a $10 shipping. Actually, it turned out to be about $25 with shipping. Now, nobody's going to order a 10-ounce jar of hot fudge for $25, except me. So
you have to try it.
You've got to go back to these...
I tried it today, and it was the consistency of it, the texture was not the same.
No,
it
was it's not floury, pasty. It's not smooth like it used to be.
Pasty. It was very smooth
I think they're trying to make it richer. Yeah, they're going to charge you that kind of money for, I don't remember what the numbers were, but, $25 with shipping.
If you have a favorite hot fudge, not chocolate topping. No, hot fudge.
Yes, there is a difference.
Let me know. Please put that in there.
Because I'm a chocolate topping guy. I still like Hershey's chocolate syrup, so I'm easy to please. But no, find those things from your childhood and go back. Unless you guys, I know some of you guys are like in your 20s or early 30s, in which case you're still in your childhood. But for those of you who are, let's call it 35 and older. No, I'm kidding. Anybody, you can always go back. They say you can never go back. Don't look back. You can never look back. Don Henley, you're wrong. You can go back, and we prove it as often as we can. So thank you, Momofuku Ando, for instant ramen. Like I say, capitalism may not make everybody rich, but it makes everybody richer than they would have been. And if you've got to live on ramen noodles as you work your way through college for a while, that's what a lot of us did. Do it. Make it happen. 1962, we jump forward 4 years. Little Eva, or Eva, earns a #1 hit with the Loco-Motion. Come on, baby, do the Loco-Motion. Well, that probably sounds more like the Grand Funk Railroad version, but the first #1 hit maker with the song was Little Eva. This song, incidentally, we've mentioned Carole King before. The great Carole King, not just a 70s singer, but a songwriter, one of the Brill-building songwriters, along with her partner, Gerry Goffin. They wrote that song. The Loco-Motion sounds like the kind of thing that maybe Little Eva could have wrote that herself. Any of us could have come up with that, right? No. Great songwriters. Timeless hit. Kylie Minogue recently did it and made it a hit all over again. So, on this date, 1962, that's all the on this dates except for a couple of birthdays to celebrate. Now I'm going to make it just one birthday I'm going to celebrate. It is the late, we just lost him 4 years ago, the late Sean Connery's birthday. And I want to know, what's your favorite Sean Connery film? Doesn't have to be a James Bond film. It could be Zardoz. It could be anything. Let me know your favorite Sean Connery film. If it's one we haven't seen yet, we may add that to our to-do list.
Yeah, let us know. I mean, all I really know is he was James Bond, and that's all I know from.
Oh, God. Hunt for Red October, Indiana Jones, the third film. Endless. And, of course, Zardoz in the diaper, the man diaper. Oh, man, what a film. What a film that was. A slightly obscure Sean Connery film. If you are a fan of Matt Damon. What was Matt Damon's great film? It's one of his
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting. If you're a fan of Good Will Hunting, by the filmmaker Gus Van Sant, he did another film, similar kind of premise, called Finding Forrester. Sort of the only difference is Matt Damon's replaced with an African-American character, and different circumstances. If you found Good Will Hunting inspiring, and I certainly did, watch Finding Forrester. That does have Sean Connery, not Robin Williams, but well worth seeing. Most anything Sean Connery did was well worth seeing. It's just great style. Race Jacobson said he was in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I saw that, but I don't remember it well enough to remember. I have to give that another watch. And,
Highlander?
Highlander? Robin says either Hunt for Red October or The Rock. Cool. Yeah, we've got several votes. Paul is also saying Hunt for Red October. Excellent. Stephen Katz, in with the James Bond, says Goldfinger. You can't go wrong with the early James Bond films. Excellent. I'm probably due to do a James Bond marathon. I've done that once or twice before. Watch all of the James Bond films from beginning to end, except for the last film, which actually wasn't out when I did my last James Bond marathon. But, the ironically named last Daniel Craig film, I'm still angry about that. But all the rest of them are well worth watching. Yes, even George Lazenby and arguably David Niven as well. Peter Sellers, Woody Allen in the original Casino Royale. It was a comedy, of course.
Right.
Daniel Craig did make an excellent James Bond film out of Casino Royale eventually, and that was not a comedy. Although he's awfully fun in these detective films he's been doing lately. So, yes, happy birthday to the late but great Sean Connery. The only other thing on this day is it's National Whiskey Sour Day. We probably should have thrown a couple together, but I'm drinking coffee.
I don't. I think there's egg white in that.
Yeah, the egg whites are optional, but yes, okay. a lot of bartenders will make a whiskey sour with a bit of froth on top.
I would not have egg white in it. I don't like egg white in cocktails.
Yeah, a couple of the recipes I looked at warned not recommended for pregnant women or children because they're more sensitive to salmonella and this raw egg whites. Oh my God, are we still?
Well, no, but that's funny because, I mean, would pregnant women and children drink?
Why are pregnant women and children drinking whiskey sours? That's a good point. That is a very good point. I especially like because there are a lot of options for garnish, which I guess there are for most mixed drinks. Garnish with, for example, one set of recipes I'm working from here, garnish with a maraschino cherry, Angostura bitters, lemon slice, and or orange slice. That's a lot of garnish to put in a drink. Well, and or I guess could just mean or. Pick your poison happy whiskey. Whiskey sour is a good drink for people who are not drinkers, like me. I'm not really a heavy drinker, so that's the kind of drink that sits well. Either way, if you've got them, light them up. And that's all I'm going to say about On This Date, except that what have we been listening to this week? Well, yesterday, I got to participate in the Yaron Brook Show as one of his monthly supporters. So I was on the AMA, Ask Me Anything, and Hangout. So I guess Yaron was hanging out with us. Isn't that cool? You should give that one a listen. I thought it was pretty darn good, and it's going to connect to a couple things we'll talk about today.
I've got to interrupt you here.
Yes.
Saint Greg, a.k.a. Greg Lewis, just gave me a link.
A link to?
Mushroom-flavored ramen.
Jeez Louise.
What?
Oh my God, and it's the Mansion brand.
Yeah, Maruchan or whatever.
Maruchan, whatever that is. It's the one you always see on the shelves. It's either that or Top Ramen. Those are the two.
What sort
Okay,
of...
well, Greg, who incidentally is a regular attendee of Great Lakes Objectivist.
Thank you, Saint Greg. I'm going to call you Saint Greg.
Saint Greg.
Saint Greg of ramen.
Well, he usually brings baked products, yes. And he should be sainted for that already. Maybe you get like a double saint. You get an extra star, like a 2-star general on your saint, whatever it is that designates that. Very, very cool.
Well, okay, I'm going to look into it. I'm clicking on it, and it's saying that it's not available.
Well, keep that page up, and we'll take care of that afterward.
I'm going to, okay.
If it's there, if it exists, you will find somebody who's got it.
Oh my gosh!
Now that you've got a lead into it, and you know it's which brand you're looking for, and all that.
There's actually a whole list of reviews, and it's got 4.4 stars
out of 5.
Of course it does.
Because it's the one flavor that they should never have discontinued. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it's still out there. Very cool. Thank you for that.
Wow.
Greg,
okay.
You do a much better job watching the chat than I do, and Race is referring to magical mushrooms. Probably won't have those kind of effects, although Sam Harris would be impressed if they did. It's amazing how everything is getting normalized these days, at least by somebody besides the AMA that you should listen to if you haven't already, because I was on there. Although it was weird because there are audio level issues. The people asking questions in the Zoom session, our levels were really, really low. You could hardly hear the things that we were saying. And I'm a little disappointed because Yaron said at the beginning of the show that if any of the levels were low, let him know in the chat. I don't know if anybody let him know in the chat because they were way too low.
Yeah,
but
they are.
Whatever.
Well, actually,
it was a good show.
I do like his current mode of speaking.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. It's so much more soothing for him to talk about, tyrannical issues of the day and a dictatorship and the losing of our rights.
Oh, yeah. Let me explain, because folks won't know what you mean. What she means by his way of speaking is his tone of voice when he's on vacation or when he's on another location. Yeah, you're talking about like he tends to talk real low and real mellow.
He's considerate of the people, in the next room,
or
kind
something.
Of talking.
I don't actually know why he gets that really mellow vibe when he's on the road.
But I really appreciate
you like that.
not having the higher volume and the yelling when he's talking about us losing our rights. It's so much better to take. So anyway, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking. Jim Ashley, who knows more about movies than you'll ever forget, gave 4 recommendations for Sean Connery, which is 5 recommendations. I haven't seen Outland. Huh. I haven't seen Marnie. Of course, we've all seen Hunt for Red October. And then he says Bond, James Bond, the real James Bond, yeah. Good, good. Well, we'll see about Outland and Marnie. And, could always rewatch, as I say, James Bond and Hunt for Red October. Outstanding. Very good. And like that, as I say, definitely watch that episode from Yarring Brook. Now, the other thing I've been watching or listening to this week goes along with the coffee mug. Problem is, I have a Yes coffee mug. I actually have more than one Yes coffee mug. My favorite progressive rock band. My favorite rock band. But what came out this week is not Yes, but Yes's former lead singer. If you are a Yes fan, if you're a prog fan, if you're just a good music fan, check out the album True that was just released, what was it, yesterday or the day before, by John Anderson and the Band Geeks. Now, if you don't already know about this, you're like, what the hell kind of a name is that for a band? It turns out they're professional musicians. They're like, these guys are ringers. The lead of them, for example, Richie Castellano, tours with other bands. The one he spends the most time with is Blue Oyster Cult. He's their bass player when they're touring. A lot of bands get on and they don't have a permanent player for a position. That's what he does. These guys in this group are all ace musicians, and because they're kind of behind the scenes, they've given themselves the quirky name The Band Geeks, because they're all band geeks. They're kind of like me in that they're all into music theory and all sorts of quirky things. They just happen to be 1,000 times better musicians than I am, but really good. So they call themselves the Band Geeks. They did covers of some songs by Yes. John Anderson heard them, wanted to get together with them. Bottom line, they went touring together, spent enough time together, decided to do an album. And if you are a fan of John Anderson, if you're a fan of early Yes, or even mid-period or latter-day Yes, True by John Anderson and the Band Geeks. I've been listening to that. It is really, really good. If you're a fan of that kind of music, and Lord knows I am. I've also been listening to Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, pitch corrected. And this is one just for the music fans out there. Did you know that the song Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears, the instruments are not playing at concert pitch? Everything is about 3.1% too fast. And I'm sure the instruments weren't out of tune. They simply sped it up on tape or in the software and made it sound a little brighter, a little more oomph. But I've been practicing that song for the upcoming picnic, which is why I mention it. If you're going to be in Southeast Michigan 2 Saturdays from yesterday, September 7th, you need to come and picnic with us.
Yes.
Southeast Michigan. The park is in Redford, Michigan. And we're throwing a picnic. It's all day from 1 in the afternoon until 8 o'clock at night. If you are a musician, you can come play your instrument. If you're a singer, you can come sing along with whatever it is that's going on. If you can't do either, you can come karaoke. And if you can't do any of those, come eat some food. So, Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. If you try to learn that song and play along with the recording, you'll be like, why is my guitar or keyboard or whatever you're playing so far out of tune? And the answer is, it's not in concert pitch. And that's it for that. And the tie-in. What was the tie-in?
About
Yes. I know.
What?
I did write it in the show notes. There is a link in the show notes to the HB letter. The Harry Binswanger letter, which is really more of a forum, a website, everything to do with Harry Binswanger. Dr. Harry Binswanger, one, if not the leading objectivist intellectual out there. And Harry Binswanger, I think I mentioned this last week, did his Sunday Meeting of the Minds. This is one of the best reasons to sign up for HBL, Harry Binswanger's letter, is he throws a meeting of the minds just about every Sunday morning. And it's a Zoom meeting, so there's 40, 50 of us on a meeting. And it's Harry talking about some aspect of philosophy or his history with objectivism, or interviewing somebody who's related to all of the things that he talks about, or something else altogether, but always something interesting on Sundays. And not this morning, but the Sunday before, he did the topic, Growing Objectivism in the 21st Century. I mentioned that. He was trying to think, well, he says, well, I'm going to live for hundreds of years, but I'm disappointed with the amount of objectivism that's out there, that is in the culture. You know, he said if you told him in don't know if he said 57. He might have, not when Atlas Shrugged was published, but around then. If you told him, 70 years prior, objectivism is going to make very little impact on the culture, or at least very little penetration. I would say it's had a lot of impact, but he wouldn't have believed it. He would have said, well, then it must be a complete dystopia if that happens. Everything must have completely fallen apart. That wasn't true, but it got him thinking, man, how do we make this, well, as he said, how do we grow objectivism in the 21st century faster than we've done? I offered my answer to that, and I mentioned that last week. There are essentially two areas in which I think that needs to happen. Those of us who are encouraging people to study Ayn Rand, who are selling objectivism, we need to put a little more of what we're offering out there in terms of our own demeanor, our own style, our own passion. There's a few people who are out there talking objectivism, and you don't get the impression they're really getting much from it. They don't seem particularly happy. They might be successful, but it's hard to tell. And I think we need to sell with a little more enthusiasm, not crazy preacher, evangelist, Anthony Robbins kind of thing, but just, give people some reason to say, what's this guy talking about? He seems like he's got something I don't. Okay, that was number one. And then the number two was, I think we need to engage with harder topics, not just dismiss them, not just say, oh, anti-racism, here's the logical flaw in that, and then write it off. Because the people who think that had something to offer are not going to be convinced. You need to give them a little more substance. In other words, we need to engage. We need to get dirt under our fingernails. Okay, those are my answers. I got a note back on the forum, and I won't say who did it because it's not public. But here's part of the answer I got. Would you be willing to engage with David Kelly, the Atlas Society, Robert Trzynski, Craig Biddle, and Andrew Bernstein, perhaps even the Libertarian Party? You may be surprised at how much you actually have in common with them.
Well, it's a bit of a blanket
there are two ways you could take that depending on how you read it.
Yeah.
You could read it as, oh, would you be willing to engage with David Kelly? Oh, the Atlas Society, Robert Trzynski, Craig Biddle, Andrew Bernstein, perhaps even the Libertarian Party. You may be surprised at how much you actually have in common with them. Or, if you know a little bit about the history of objectivism, and where the names I've just read stand in relation to, for example, the Ayn Rand Institute, you might have read this as, would you be willing to engage with David Kelly of the Atlas Society, Robert Trzynski, Craig Biddle, and Andrew Bernstein? Perhaps even the Libertarian Party? Well, you may be surprised how much you actually have in common with them. So, you tell me in the chat, how would you have read that?
Yeah. Well, I read it in the positive, like he's talking positively about everybody in the list.
Okay, well that's good. If he's just saying you should reach out to those people, because I'm wondering why. Why would what I said immediately bring those folks to mind?
I mean, I don't know who the person is or how much they know.
Guy. I mean, he's on HBL, which means he knows something about both objectivism and the history of objectivism.
Oh, golly, I'd have to talk to the person to figure out where he's coming from. I mean,
yeah, it left me wondering too. You just don't know.
Well, and my immediate response to that was a snarky comment in my head, which was, we could possibly engage with Nathaniel Branden through seance.
He believed in a certain amount of woo, and he may well have believed that. And if he really believes, then maybe it's true.
But, Ayn Rand was a non-believer, so seances wouldn't work with her. In
the chat, Christopher Smith is pointing out, these aren't all the same. These are different people in
I know.
whole different categories. Robin says, I didn't know Andrew Bernstein was on bad terms with the ARI. I don't know that he is, but he's gone down a different path.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way. Andrew Bernstein has always been kind of in our circle of friends. He's kind of a special guy to us. And no matter what choices he makes, we're always going to be somewhat loyal to him.
Right.
So
Yeah.
That's all I'll say about that.
We'll always be friendly to Andy.
But yeah, that's a real spread of characters. Very different circumstances. Very, very different.
Yeah, and some of these people I don't actually know.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and on top of that, it's sort of like he names specific people. Okay, I can get that, but like the entire Libertarian Party? I don't know about that. I know people who've been involved in Libertarian Party who most likely are not involved with them anymore, that are really, really sharp. And I really admire them, and they're my Facebook friends, and, and I appreciate their perspectives, politically and morally, too. So it's interesting. Just depends on the individual.
It was a really strange response to get. And then I realized, well, one of the quirky things about me and you and all of us is that, especially in our series of 108 episodes of Life on Earth.
That's all. Wait, that's
108 episodes of One Life on Earth
Not
on the ARC UK channel.
Right.
Well, yeah, the first half of those we did together, and then later when I was doing them solo, I was approaching topics like benevolence and graciousness or grace, and topics that are not kind of standard, well, certainly not standard Ayn Rand objectivism topics, but that I thought have some value, some weight, and are worth discussing and getting the most we can out of. And for better or for worse, unfortunately, and I knew this at the time, one of the challenges is that the other organization that has people talking about that kind of stuff, it brings to mind the Atlas Society, because they do that. I haven't read their stuff, so I don't know if I would agree with any of it. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised when I'm talking in the usual Robert Nasir terms, trying to stretch a little bit beyond to grab some of the values that other people have that we haven't fully capitalized on yet, that somebody would read that and say, I don't know, this guy sounds a lot like those other people. So let me say flat out, I'm not those other people. I have always been and will continue to be an Ayn Rand Institute supporter. And I think they do just fine a job expanding things out while staying true to Ayn Rand's ideas, since they are the Ayn Rand Institute and not some other organization with some other name where they can go into all sorts of woo. And at the same time, I thought, and this is one of my favorite expressions, bring it on. Bring it on, Mr. Compton. Now, fortunately, that wasn't the only opinion that was expressed in the forum and the only response that I got. In fact, the one after that was, I fully agree with both of your points. No, not both people, both of the points that I made. And he goes into it, and that's good. That's a good thing. But I thought, once again, sometimes there are these concepts which, if handled wrong, if handled badly, can be really, really woo. And yet, a lot of us in the philosophic community, and even in the objectivist community, to narrow that down a bit, we miss out on it. There's a lot of lonely objectivists out there, and I don't just mean the love-starved, the lonely hearts out there, for whom I have enormous sympathy, because Lord knows I've gone through that. But even just ordinary folks who have become less social, less open, less gregarious.
Right.
And consequently have also missed out on all sorts of great values like kindness and generosity and benevolence. And just being open to ordinary people and the wonderful things that ordinary people have to offer.
Right.
So we went down to New Orleans.
Yes.
And it was jam-packed. 5 nights, 6 days. And
it was so great. I've already said that.
And every day, something great was planned. Usually 2 great things were planned.
Or 3.
And by the time we got halfway through the day, Amy would add on a couple more. So it turned out just about every day there were 4 things that happened. And one of the things that stood out is that in many of the events, of course, If you go to a museum, there are docents, there are people walking around and people running things, people telling you things, giving you tours. If you go to music, there's musicians and there are people selling merchandise. The point is, everywhere there's people administering all of these things, mostly people who love the thing that they're working on. Even in the restaurants, the wait staff, there's all these people. And Amy, you're usually friendly, but when you went to New Orleans,
I was super friendly.
You weren't just friendly, you were engaging people.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of conversations you found yourself having.
Well, I'll start with a young woman named Meg.
Meg, at the Frenchman Cafe on Frenchman Street. So
this was a late night. We went down Frenchman Street, and we were, we went to the Spotted Cat, and that was okay. Our favorite band was not working that night, unfortunately. That was the Jumbo Shrimp band.
Yeah, the Jumbo Shrimp Jazz Band. If you can catch them in New Orleans, they're a hoot.
Oh, they're great. Fun. They're great. So anyway, we were just looking for adventure. We stopped on the corner. It was filled with people. There was about a 5-piece brass jazz band, more like a what do you call it? A high school marching band kind of band. And then they had trumpets and a trombone and I think a maybe even a baritone. I don't know, but it was pretty wild. And they were making a big ruckus, and they had a drum, and it was just great. And then we went down the way, and I'm looking for some food. And so I find a place, and usually before you go in, you check out their menu to see if you like it. And this place was particularly quiet, and I was really yearning for that. So we go in. We're greeted by this young lady who is in her early 20s, I think, named Meg. So, I don't know. Somehow things got chatty. And I was really, really open to it, and I really wanted to know people and get to understand what they like, because again, this New Orleans is made of music. It's made of this magical musical atmosphere, and it is beautiful, and I think it affects everybody, or if it affects all the good people. And so anyway, we get to talking. I think the conversation started with the band The Smiths, and we were talking about the Smiths and Morrissey and our favorite songs. And I told her one of my very favorite Smith songs is called What She Said. And then we started talking about that, and we're like, oh yeah, that song is way too short. Anyway, she caught on with what I was saying right away. I'm like loving it. And and we're hitting it off, and then we start, of course, the conversation about the Smiths and Morrissey always has to evolve into a conversation about Friedrich Nietzsche, always. And so then we started talking about that, and we started talking about all of these other things, and it was so lovely, and nobody else was in the restaurant, and it was not busy, and we could just talk with Meg, or I could talk with her. And of course, I mentioned Ayn Rand, and she gives me that sheepish look, like, oh, my professors at college warned me about this, but I'm not sure because I really like this person. that look. And I'm like, oh boy, here's the look. And
you don't look like the kind of person who would like Ayn Rand.
I think she said something to that effect. And so I explained to her in the most, I don't know, the simplest terms I could think of, that, the notions that are spread about Ayn Rand are not true. She is not an advocate of narcissism. She's not, she's not horrible. She's not a horrible person.
She's actually wonderful.
She believed in having relationships and friendships, and she wanted all these values, and a lot of what she said is very much misconstrued by people who just don't like her, because she challenges so much of the regular morality that's out there. Anyway, So, anyway, it was just a lovely... I think I got a picture with her.
Yes.
But I was very open to it. And so that leads into... Do you want to go into a few nights ago?
Yes, but just to make the point, that was not the only conversation we had. Incidentally, we're at a restaurant. This is the server, the waitress. And we're talking to her, and it's not very crowded. It's later at night. But there are other customers, and she keeps saying, "Oh my gosh, I really should let you guys eat your meal." And we're like, "No, it's okay.
No, I want to talk to you."
And then the other half of the time, she's like, "Oh my God, I really should be doing my job." But one more thing. But throughout the week at New Orleans, there were many of these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And not the same topics all the time, but just people to talk to who were interested in interesting things and sharing interesting things.
It was so great.
Now, some of you will say, well, my life's already like that. But if it's not, something to be open to. So
yeah.
I'm using the Yes mug, not just because John Anderson of Yes just put out his new album this week, but because we went to see Yes this week.
Yes, we did.
We went to a rock concert. Some of you older people will know. It's funny because older people now are, what are you talking about? When I was young, it was rock and roll. When I think of older people, I think of my parents. And for them, rock stars were Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. But anyway, this week went to Yes and Deep Purple.
Yes, Deep Purple.
And I'm not a big Deep Purple fan, but I am a big Yes fan. So we go to this concert. And Yes is the opening act. They only played for an hour and 15 minutes. And maybe it's because it was, the headliners were Deep Purple. Or maybe it's just because some Yes fans are not my kind of Yes fans, but there were a good deal of drunk people there.
Oh my gosh.
And probably stoned people. You could certainly smell it in the air.
And
it's weird to me because Yes is such a band about positivity and even, a little bit woo, peace and love and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't expect hooligan behavior. And by now I should know better because for some reason, some people are Yes fans even though they're also boorish.
It's like the song Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen, which I am not fond of.
Well, if you're fond of that song, whatever Amy's saying won't make any sense to you. Glory Days is a charming song. But I know you kind of associate that with low-life, trailer park, drunken rowdiness.
It's like, yeah, I'm 55, 60 years old, and let's go out and party. I'm like, you're really, really old. You should be worrying about your health and cancer and things. Stop it.
See, I wouldn't say that. What I would say is you're 50 years old. You should have figured out how to have a really good, raucous, completely outrageous good time without drinking.
Right.
I always say, as I said before, I'm not much of a drinker. Don't smoke dope, although, I had my glory days when I was young. But, I've learned I kind of want to be there when I'm having a good time. And I don't need any alcohol or anything.
It was so bizarre.
I don't need any substances to get me to let loose. I don't have any need of any chemical enhancements to lose all of my inhibitions. And I could tell you stories if you wanted me to justify that assertion. I don't get it. I get it for kids. If you're 20 years old, if you're 25, even if you're 30 years old, and it's hard for you to let go of your inhibitions and let all the really kind of borderline crazy stuff out, I totally get that. But if you're 40 and you haven't learned how to party without the assistance of liquid courage, what the hell, man?
Oh,
you should be able to let go of your inhibitions at the snap of a finger. You should have had enough practice at that by now. Anyway, yeah. I shouldn't get into that. The point is, we're at a Deep Purple concert. Yes is the opening act, and during the Yes concert, there are people who are not fully sober and are not fully civilized.
Right.
And
they're downright nasty.
And we're in row J, which were pretty good seats because it was not a Yes headlining concert. I didn't want to lay out $1,000 for front row seats. So we're in row J, which means there's 12 rows ahead of us, whatever it was. And we're right on the aisle, a little left of center. And there's this, there are people who work there who are keeping everybody under control. And there's a gal there who's sitting in a chair facing the opposite way of all of us. You would have seen this at rock concerts. Basically, looking with her back to the rock and roll band and looking at the crowd. Mm-hmm. And as people walk down the aisle, she'll help them find their seats.
Yep.
And as people act in a way that they shouldn't be acting, she will go up to them and get them to, sit down, sit in your seat. Not because they're standing up to cheer, but because they're walking around and getting in front of people and stumbling around.
Right.
And there are people who she will just point, get out. And it's funny because some of them would, kind of stand there like they're going to, no, I'm not going to get out. I'm not going to go back to the lawn where my real tickets are. I'm not going to. And she would just give them the look.
Oh, she gave him the look. She gave him like this really, really severe bulldog look. And I'm like, wow, that I don't even know if we can do that, but it was great.
She was a professional.
She was a pro.
And apropos of what we were talking about, we did at one point, actually, it's funny, we told you about the punk rock concert we went to a week prior, and Amy found it was so loud that you couldn't talk to people. So Amy, you figured out, you went on your phone into your text app.
This was a precaution because sometimes my voice just doesn't carry very well in loud areas. This was after Yes got done with their show. I get up, I'm like, Robert, we need to go over to her and I need to talk to her. And
so to start the conversation, you had a message on your phone that you could then show her without having to shout at her right at the beginning.
Right here.
And start the conversation
and
there.
It says, I want to thank you for keeping the peace. It must be hard. And thank you for singing along with some of the Yes songs. I appreciate you. And she was sitting there and she was like singing along and everything while watching people and everything. But she could hear her mouthing the lyrics so I had her look at this just in case. But I also I gave her my verbal thank yous as well. And thankfully it was not as noisy at the time, so we had a really lovely conversation. I didn't expect her after seeing her wonderful bulldog look and contending with these rowdy, nasty people. I didn't expect such a benevolent response because I thought she was going to say something like, yeah, those people suck, and be all cynical about it. No.
Or just be, yeah, whatever, I don't really talk about this, I'm just doing my job. No, it was none of that.
She was a valuer.
She was a sweetheart.
She went on, she said, well, you know what, I'm of that generation where I really appreciate this music, and I know some of these songs, and I really, really enjoy it, and I gotta tell you, this is the best job ever, because I get to see these shows. And I'm thinking to myself, she's contending with these nasty people all this time.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have guessed she was like turning around watching the band or anything, but she loved it anyway.
and I said, well, thank you so much. It must be hard. And she's like, oh, no. I do. And she's hired in to usher and bounce basically for a number of different venues around the Metro Detroit area.
That's what she does.
And that's what she does. And she just loves it. And
she just goes between like the Mike Donegan of bouncers.
By the way, her name was Meg too. So
her name
shout
was
out
Meg.
to all the Megs out there.
So anybody who's listening, if your name is Meg, you are awesome. Just in advance.
advance.
We just know that.
But I was so pleased, and we got a picture, a little selfie with her and everything, and it was just the most adorable thing ever. And I was so pleased to kind of give her some gratitude, and then she showed me the values that she held. And it was really a lovely exchange, and I'm so happy I did that. So just, my mindset at the time was I wasn't particularly happy. Yes should have been the headliners, and these nasty drunk people shouldn't be around. They should just be people who really love Yes. And so I was not in the best mood. But I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to make my own magic here. And by
focus on the good stuff.
By showing somebody who is competent and good in front of you, you don't even have to know them. Just let them know what you appreciate about them, and magic will happen. And it's a wonderful spiritual exchange of values. And you know, it's wonderful. So I wasn't expecting such a lovely time of it. It's great.
You know, the magic is out there, and saying that will get me in trouble, of course, with some people on HB Letter, or some people in philosophy. Incidentally, in the chat, Christopher Smith says, asks if Steve Howe is the only original member of Yes still with the band. No, because Steve Howe is not an original member of the band. There was a different guitar player for the first 2 albums.
Yeah, Peter.
There are no. I see, the word original is funny in this context.
Yeah, it is.
I should say there are no founding members still with the band. Steve Howe was with the band since 1971. But Jeff Downes was in the band in 1980, and he's the keyboard player now. No, everybody's got a different pedigree within the band. Billy Sherwood, the bass player, was actually a co-writer on the Union album and was on tour with them for the Talk Tour in 1995.
Yeah.
As a guitar player.
Right.
Not the bass player, which he is now. So it's complicated.
Yeah, so Peter Banks was the original guitarist for Yes for 2 albums.
It may be worth saying that my attitude on all of this, because Yes fans can be fractious, is that as long as the people who are playing in whichever iteration of the band are enjoying what they're doing, I am behind them 100%. If they still got passion for the music,
yes,
I am glad that John Anderson is touring with this group that call themselves the Band Geeks, although I still think they need a better name, and they are making wonderful music. And I am glad that Steve Howe is keeping Yes together and keeping that going. And when he retires, then there really won't be any either founding or original members, however you want to define those terms. And I still think they should keep doing what they're doing as long as they are producing new music and enjoying playing the classics. I'm 100% behind them. And I know people who say they should retire because I don't like what they're doing anymore. And I don't understand. It seems like, no, they shouldn't retire. You should just stop going and seeing them and stop complaining about it. So, either way, they should do what they want to do. I should enjoy it or listen to something else. More power to them. Now, you might be asking, as we get close to the top of the hour, where did the time go? How does Robert intend to tie all this together into a discussion of kindness and benevolence? And what the hell was that about? And the answer is that this week we had the Democratic National Convention.
Oh, did we?
We did. And if you watched the Democratic National Convention, or if you, like me, just listened to some of the main speeches on it, you are thinking about how you're going to vote. Now, I don't know if that had much impact on it. Probably didn't have any impact on how I'm going to vote, although I will say both Michelle Obama and Barack Obama gave outstanding speeches and delivered them in outstanding fashion. Bill Clinton was pretty good. Oprah Winfrey was good. That one chick, Harris, Kamala Harris. She was. Oh, Kamala Harris. She was pretty good too.
Oh yeah.
Now here's a question for you. Well, think about this for a second. Why would you vote? Whether for Harris or the other guy, the game show guy.
Yeah, game show host.
Why would you vote? There's no election that has ever been decided, at least on the national scale. No election is decided by one vote. Your vote's not going to make any difference. My vote's not going to make any difference. Why would you vote? And the point is, we do vote. We vote as if our vote might have some impact on the outcome of the election, and we know it won't. But when we vote, if we have a good reason to vote, it's not because our vote's going to decide the outcome. We know it won't. We vote because there is value, personal value, psychological value in being out there, being out in the world, in putting our view, our opinion about things in the world out there. You know, and there's a lot of other reasons to vote. For example, if we're going to fight for certain policies, and we're going to tell other people, if we can tell enough people, that might make a difference in the vote. If we're going to tell them how to vote, if I'm going to tell you, hey, next time around, do this, write in Thomas Jefferson and don't vote for either Carmel or DJT. then I better get my ass out there and vote too. I can't do it with any credibility if I'm a complete shyster. Even if I'm really, really good at lying and say, well, I'm going to vote this way, you should too, even though I know I'm not going to bother to vote. Somebody might catch me. Reality always wins. Eventually it catches up with you. It matters to us. Why does voting matter to us? Because it matters to us. It's personal, intellectually, psychologically, spiritually. It's like when we contribute to a charity or participate in some disaster relief or help some stranger we might never, ever meet again. If you're on vacation and you help somebody out, it's probably somebody you're never going to see again in your life. But
right.
The impact might be trivial, to the point of being so trivial it's insignificant. But what matters is you, me, us. We are in that moment having that impact. You know the starfish story, the two guys walking down the beach. And because the tide came in, there are starfish on the beach. And if they can't make their way back to the water, they're going to die. And as they're walking, there's one right there, and the one guy reaches down, he picks it up, tosses it back into the ocean. And his friend says, "Why did you bother to do that? There's all these. What difference is going? It's not going to make a difference to all these starfish." And his friend says, "Well, it made a difference to that one."
Yeah.
It matters because it's us doing the thing we are doing. You are more important than the bigger picture. You are the center of this universe. We are having the impact we want to have. It may not be big, but it is the impact we want to have. We are engaging in the actions we want to see out in the world. We are making the world a little more ours, a little more us. And in this context, it's not particularly important if other people do the same thing. Reciprocity, trade, this is an element in relationships. But tit for tat is too simplistic in this case. I won't help friends who never, ever, ever return the favor. But I'm not going to hire a bookkeeper for my friendships to make sure that every time I pay for breakfast, the other guy pays for it the next time. You ruin your life that way. It ruins all the fun in having a relationship. And some of you out there, well, none of you out there, but some people out there would be saying, yeah, but justice. We have to make sure there's justice. The values in a friendship are so far above and beyond dollars and cents and who bought the last drink that it is absurd to say, yeah, there needs to be bookkeeping in this relationship. Because, just helping people, not even friends, even strangers, it's just fun. No, not a sacrifice, not you feel guilty about the homeless guy on the side of the road. No, just the opportunities to participate in those kinds of activities. Anthony Robbins, who I kind of picked on earlier in the show, but he had a fun point he made. He called it a cape walk. And this is something he does to manage his state, to put himself in empowered mode. And what he'll do is he'll stand up, get up on his feet, and he'll stand up straight, put his shoulders back, and imagine that he's wearing a cape, like a flowing cape, like a superhero. Now walk around the room and strut and feel that cape coming off you and realizing you could go out and rescue people, or you could go out and build something, or you've got power, you are superhuman. And one way to have that cape walk is, I did this a lot when I was in IT, is you go out there and you be the one who fixes it. Then nobody else could fix it. Maybe nobody else could fix it just because they weren't willing to stay after 5 o'clock. They weren't willing to put in overtime. And you're like, oh, well, I don't want to be the sucker who's the only one who stays over. I don't want to sacrifice. But there is value just in putting on that cape, in being the guy who makes it happen. And helping people is like that. No, not altruism, not self-sacrifice. Helping out friends, even a stranger on the side of the road, flat tire, a woman who's not used to changing a tire and would have to wait for AAA and be late for her thing, and you say, I know how to change a tire. Can I get that for you? Why would you do that? Isn't that a sacrifice? No, it's fun. And you meet people, and you have conversations, and you get to be cocky. You get to say, yeah, I can do it. Watch me. I'm going to make this thing happen. No, not braggadocious, just feeling your own efficacy. It's why we leave tips. sometimes big tips, in situations where you're not going to see the waitress after you leave the tip. She's not even going to be able to say thank you. You don't even know if she appreciated it. But do you want to live in a world where people are generous? Oh, yeah, you do. Well, I can't change everybody, but I can change myself. It made a difference for that one, and I feel it, because my actions, your actions, should matter more to you than anybody else's. You create the world you want to live in by being the person you want to be in this world. That's why I've said we shouldn't treat people the way they deserve to be treated. Well, we should, but we should go deeper than that.
Yeah.
We should treat people the way we deserve to treat people.
Yes.
You know, if you say, you should treat everybody just exactly the way they deserve to be treated, that's justice. It's not justice. It's an injustice to you, because it's letting their behavior set the standard.
Right.
And I have to figure out how to respond to everything everybody does exactly as they deserve. No, real justice is you treat people the way you decide you want people treated. And that includes bad people. You're gonna punish them, or you're going to just get them out of your life. But it would be a self-sacrifice every time somebody does something wrong to say, oh, I need to figure out the right amount of punishment or the right amount of denouncing him. No, you don't. You can do that, and sometimes you should do that. But for your own reasons, for your own sake, and in your own terms, not theirs. And that is why I do encourage benevolence and kindness and even charity. Not for altruistic reasons, not because of guilt, not because anybody tells you to, but just, I want to put this out in the world. It's another reason to live below your means. You know, if you're living on ramen noodles, it's really hard to come up with big tips for your waitress. And, the most you can do is tip them 15%, or some people think 20 is now the new lowest.
Or you can go up and tell them why you appreciate them and why you're grateful for their for how they're actually handling their job. And
again, not out of guilt, not feeling like, oh, I can't afford a big tip, I better be nice. But just because it's more fun to be nice to people than it is to be mean to people.
And
for your sake.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something I've got to wake up to every day and remind myself of, and oftentimes I do remind myself, and I do remember. But the goal here for me in my life is to find meaning in everyday life, to find virtues in everyday life, to find reason in everyday life, to find values that you can share with other people in everyday life, to find something that you did really well and esteem myself for in every day. Those will turn your life around, and things will, you'll actually be engaging with not just what you have on your plate and what you have at hand, but actually reaching out to other people and putting into those words the thing that you really are grateful for them for what they're doing, and put it into words and help them discover that there's these virtues out there that you're grateful for them. And it's really lovely and eye-opening and enlightening experience.
Yes.
And and with that, one thing we were talking about what we were listening to. There's this really good, it's very, very good YouTube channel called Cults to Consciousness.
Cult to Consciousness.
Well, cults, which is plural,
cults.
And then T-O, consciousness. So, in other words, the idea of people who were raised in a cult, for instance, or a what do they call it? A high control group. One that is basically it could just be a family even where the mother and father is constantly trying to control you. and controlling what you believe, or perhaps a purity culture in that way, or if you know what I mean, like, with the Mormons and, of course this happens in Muslim families and so on and so forth. So people who are coming out of these cults or high control situations of groups that are trying to control, basically telling them that it's usually modeled after some variant of the mind-body dichotomy, and it's usually some kind of religion, although not necessarily. But it's usually always found, based in the primacy of consciousness in some variant. Anyway, so this really lovely person, she interviews these people who come out and tell their story about how they escaped. Whether it is the Mormons or some other Christian cult, and now she's actually interviewing people who are coming out of Islam. And so on and so forth. It's gosh, you wouldn't believe how many, Scientology, of course, but there's just so many of these sad situations that children are growing up with nowadays. I don't think it's the majority, but a lot of these people come out and they realize that they can find, as they put it, true individual sovereignty is what they're looking for. And that concept is expressed in this interview show called Cults to Consciousness. I just want to mention this because it's a really excellent... these are not objectivists, but it's a really, really excellent show where they talk about ideas in ways that you just don't see anywhere else, or I don't see anywhere else. Maybe Lex Friedman might talk about it. Maybe Joe Rogan might, have a good interview or whatever. But there really isn't a sense of true, spiritual valuing in those types of polemical shows that I found, other than this one particular show. So anyway, I thought I'd put that out there. Very interesting stuff. It's a topic that I know you're not interested in, but I know a lot about, and it's certainly something that we should all look into, because it's about individuals who basically go through a lot of hell, and then they realize that they have their own minds. They have their own reasoning abilities, and that they can actually act to get out of sometimes very dangerous situations. And it's very heroic. So, there you are.
Good. Well, yes. So this is why we treat people, again, not as they deserve to be treated, but as we deserve to treat them. You set the standards. You're the author. I've said it before. You're the star and the scriptwriter of this life. So you decide how things are going to be, including how much engagement and how much kindness, how much generosity, how much benevolence. If you want to see more of those people who've got the twinkle in their eye, kind of people you encounter and then you talk to and then you say, my day is better for having met that person. If you want to be that person, you get to decide to make that happen. You are in control of this. We don't just react. Don't just react. It's not enough to say, well, if people are good to me, then I'll be good to them. Take ownership. Write the script. That's what you do. You assert mastery. You take control of this life. In this way, we create this world. And we create ourselves. We create our character. And in doing this, we reinforce empowering truths. What do you mean empowering truths? Well, we've talked about this before. Things like, I am enough. I can do this. I have enough. I want more. I'm going to work for more. I'm going to make more things happen. But, damn, I am enough. I am good. I can do this. I can afford, not just financially, I can afford logistically and spiritually to be generous because I have an abundance. And Christopher Smith mentioned Anthony Robbins' attitude of abundance. Yes. Again, another reason why don't live beyond your means. Live within your means, and you can afford to be gregarious. You can afford to be generous. It's much more fun that way. You might think, well, yeah, but I could have a little bit nicer car or house if I really live a little beyond my means. Just means I'll have to be really, really tight-fisted with cash in every other area of my life. If those are your values, hey, you go for it. But think twice, it doesn't have to be that way. And in this way, one of the many values of benevolence is that it highlights and reinforces and strengthens our own power, our own efficacy. It lets you do a cakewalk 24/7. Kindness comes easy. Kindness comes easy when you are strong and able. And that is a beautiful thing. One more thing. These kind of practices remind us and reinforce that the world is full of good people, not parasites, not people trying to take advantage of you at every turn. I mean, some people are unworthy of kindness. But those people, you don't meet them in real life. They're just they're on the internet. They're in the news stories and campus riots, and those are real people. Or rather, they're not out there in real numbers. No. People, real people, the people you actually meet when you go out in the world are good people, not parasites. These are people worthy of your engagement. Not because you should be giving them engagement, you should be giving them that gift, but because you should be receiving that gift. You should be receiving that engagement. You should be taking advantage of the opportunity to engage with these people for your own sake.
Yeah, we do have one question from, I think, Stephen in the chat on YouTube. He says, I'm not sure what you mean by how you deserve to treat them. And I think let's think of examples. Easiest example that I can think of is you're on Facebook and you give an opinion that you know is not going to be accepted by everybody. And you get negative responses. Well, what do? Do you jump on them and say, no, I'm right, you're wrong, and here's why, and let me tell you, list all the reasons? And are you going to spend half an hour of your life responding to, you don't know who this person is. You don't know if they're honest. You don't know, and do you really want to do that to yourself? Is that how you deserve to treat yourself?
Let me give you, because I know Stephen's an Ayn Rand admirer, as are most of us. Let me give you this example. Take your pick. I hope you know Rostand's Cyrano de Bergerac. And one of the notable characteristics of Cyrano de Bergerac, and it's a noble characteristic, it's a good thing, is that he does not let any insults to his good name go unchallenged. In fact, he gives a great speech in Ragueneau's place about this. If you insult Cyrano de Bergerac, and you're not just some bumbling bounder, if you are somebody with some stature, he will make you pay for that. He will not allow that bile, as he says in his system, to go unanswered. Live with this indigestion of being accused by somebody or assaulted by somebody who doesn't deserve it. Okay, there's Cyrano. You have Cyrano de Bergerac, this great man. You should be like him. Now consider the fountainhead. Consider Howard Rourke. Howard Rourke is attacked from all sides. Doesn't care. He is attacked in ways that actually cause him substantial career hardships. Doesn't care. He meets the arch antagonist in the novel, who has destroyed one of his greatest achievements up to that point. And they're both standing outside this building that Ellsworth Toohey has caused to be turned into this monstrosity. And he says to Howard Rourke, you know, Mr. Rourke, we're alone here. Why don't you tell me, in any words you like, what you think of me? And Howard Rourke answers him. He says, but I don't think of you. Now, he doesn't say that as an insult. He's not picking on Ellsworth. He's not trying to make Ellsworth feel small. He literally means it. He does not care about Ellsworth Toohey. Now, he does learn later on that sometimes you've got to fight. Sometimes you've got to take a stand. But his basic attitude is, I don't care. Now, the way I would put that is, he's not the world's policeman. He doesn't have to answer every insult, every slight. That's not what justice would mean, certainly not to me. No, I think we need to go beyond that and say, you don't treat people the way they deserve, or rather, not just the way they deserve. You don't follow a simplistic idea of justice, and just because somebody insulted you, you've now got to waste your time to turn around and insult him. No, you don't waste your time on those people. And this applies in countless ways. You don't let evil matter, as Dagny Taggart said when she first lands in the valley. We never had to take any of it seriously, did we? And our protagonist says, no, we never had to. That's my answer to that. So with that in mind,
yep.
What we do need to take seriously, what we need to invest our time in and our attention and our resources and our primary focus is the world's endless values. First and foremost, good people and good opportunities and good experiences and good values, a good life on earth. And that's it. That's all I've got to say. Running a little late. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. That was definitely more than 5 minutes. But I hope you found that it was well worth the conversation. Thank you for joining us. 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir is a sponsored program, sponsored by you, our patrons. Thank you to those of you who are patrons of the show. If you've ever thought, oh, I should give them a few dollars, maybe even a couple dollars every month, patreon.com/Robert Nasir, paypal.com/Robert Nasir. Find the links to everything at robertnasir.com. And that's it. I'm going to let you go. Oh, wait. First and foremost, I have to say thank you for being here. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, please let us know in the chat or on the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. And that's it. We wish? Afraid to wish, Mr. Reardon? We wish you every success that you so richly deserve, all of the happiness that you can find out there. I hope the things we talked about tonight will help you remember to go out and get them. Go out there and get them. Be rationally self-interested. You will find values. You will find decent people. And if you're not careful, just might find love.